Okay, so this week we're going to be working with color matching, and that is by using the color wheel, you're going to be able to figure out how to make any color in nature. Okay, so if you're trying to make a color like, say, the one here, where it's a yellow but it's kind of grayed down, you're actually going to take yellow and you're going to mix it with the color across from it in the color wheel. This is not the best color wheel, but if you make the yellow with violet, okay, and a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of violet, it will actually make the grayed down version of yellow. And some of these, you're going to see yellow mixed with a little bit of orange, so it's more of a red violet in there. So with here, I'm seeing there's some red violet tendencies in a lot of these orange colors. So instead of mixing yellow with red to make orange, or I'm going to mix it yellow with a red violet, so it'll actually create some of these colors without having to use too many colors in the palette. There's some areas where it gets to where it's almost brown, so I'm going to be mixing what's brown is basically a mixture of generally a yellow orange with blue violet or orange with blue. So I'm going to be using some of the brown to create some of these tones in there, but it's going to be mixed with the yellow so that it's not just the brown by itself. And I'm also, these darker tones, now in the printer it probably comes out more like black, but in nature, if I were to actually make those, I could actually make them out of a violet. So that's why I've mixed up some violet here, which is a mixture of the blue violet, or the red violet and the blue, and so it creates what you normally think of as purple. And I need to add a little more of this color to it. Okay, so what I'm going to be doing is trying to match the colors that I see in the photograph. Okay, but the other thing I'm going to be doing, this is a very complicated image, and so this is one that students really struggled with last year. So I was actually going to use this as a demo and try and finish up this one section of the painting. So again, violet is so dark that it doesn't take much to make it actually as dark as these areas that are in the photograph. So instead of having it go to black, I'm going to have it go to violet mixed with a little bit of yellow, and that will actually gray this down. So if I take this violet, right, some of this color, and I mix it with some yellow, so kind of the opposite of graying down yellow, I'm actually graying down violet and going to create a more of a neutral color. And I may even add, take it even further, might add a little bit of brown to it too, just to kind of give it a little more earthy tone. And again, it's hard to see it probably, but this color is now lighter than that color. And again, that's because that purple was actually darker than what's actually there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this color as sort of the color to go in and start laying in all these shapes, these darker tones, because generally when you're working with acrylics, you're going to paint dark to light. Okay, so what I want to do is and use some brush techniques and stuff to do some scumbling and creating some of these kind of illusions of gradation, and just see how it works. Okay, so I'm going to lay out what I think are some of the key darker tones first, kind of create a sense of the dark side of the rocks and this area in here, a few shapes that are up in there, and then that should set the space for the rest of what goes on. So when you're painting, I use a palette knife to mix colors because it's faster, and B, it's a lot easier to clean up. See how that was very easy to clean up. You need a lot of paper towels. All right, so these are, I don't even have enough out here right now. I know it's going to be running into trouble. So I'm going to work on this and get it going, and then show you, again, basically how I would start this painting. Okay, so let me see, make sure this color looks about right. So that's still a little on the purple side. Oh, there we go. That's where it's more brown, more grayed down. And if I put it on here and I feel like it's too light, which it might be, let me just try it in one area. It's like this area down here. No, it's pretty dark. Okay, so again, I'm not going to do the entire rock. I'm just going to do some of the areas that I think are the darker part. okay? Because you see there's a lot of gradation in that, and there's only certain areas that actually go really dark. So that's what I'm going to do. This probably didn't pick out the best brush for this. This brush is a little beat up. Okay, so again, I'm going to look, and what I can do is just change the pressure on the brush and go kind of thick to thin and create some variation in the shape. So I can create some sense of the natural form just by playing around with the brush. So, and the trick is you don't have to get every shape exactly right. It's not like somebody's face. If you draw something, incorrectly in the way the eye is laid out and stuff, well, that's gonna be a problem. But with things like rocks, as long as you create a general shape that looks rock-like, it'll actually come across pretty well. So, like I say, start working at the bottom corner of this. I need to go up to the upper left so I can see what's happening up there. There's a couple darker spots. And again, keeping the shapes kind of simple and pretty clean. So what I mean by clean is clearly defined shapes. Okay, so keeping the brushwork, creating some fairly clearly defined shapes with the brushwork. I'm probably only going to record to a certain point on this, and then I'm going to stop, finish the rest of it, because I know it's going to get unexciting to just sit and watch me do the entire thing. You see here I'm using the brush and allowing it to fragment, again creating that sense of gradation simply by the way that the brush is creating more of an irregular pattern than, but still it's a very clean defined shape, but it's a broken shape. Just realized I was starting to paint what is the grid. Not good. Okay. Again, there's a big difference between the color that I have here that has the yellow in it and just the violet itself. Okay, so let me see. Again, what I want to do with this is really just identify where the spaces are and just get those darker points in, because then I'm going to be coming back in with some blues, some grays. I'm also going to eventually come back and do some more of this dark tone back over some of this stuff. Because I may miss something. Okay. So, like I said, in here, there is just kind of a broken dark areas. So if I were to just make solid shapes there, I mean, I probably could, and then just stair step down to some of the lighter values, but I want to create a little bit of sense of the texturing that's happening by just the way the brush has been used. Okay. And with this, I'm not putting the paint on very thick, so it'll be dry literally by the time I go back to start working into it again with another color. particularly in later layers, it may be better to work a little bit heavier, but with these beginning spots, I don't want to go too heavy with the paint. Unless I were planning on, working back in wet and wet, which if you're using oil paints, you can do that. With acrylics, doesn't tend to work very well. You can use a retarder to slow it down, but it doesn't really slow it down enough to give you a whole lot of time to go back and blend into things. So I'm just establishing that area there, and that is a little more yellow in there. As purple as that is starting to look, it's okay, because again, it'll be dark enough, and I can come back in and actually make it a bit darker. Okay. A lot of this is just about establishing where your shapes are, because there's a whole lot of information. If I can make it easier to understand where I need to put color, then that makes the whole process a whole lot easier. Try to establish that shape up in there. And you notice when I'm loading brushes, I'm kind of flattening it out, making sure maintaining the shape of the brush, so I have control over how I'm actually applying the paint. probably going to try and organize some of these dark areas into more, you know, readable forms. It's really broken up a lot in here, so probably want to try and clean some of the shapes up a little bit, get rid of some of the fragmented forms, and stylize the space just a little bit. Hey you guys. Hey Morgan, what are you guys working on? Huh?
Yeah, mine has to, I put another layer of brown down for the mountain piece, and then the green needs to dry so I can make it streakier on the sides.
Okay.
So I just finished this like part of second one. Do I need to work on another one?
Yeah. I mean, the paint dries in a matter of like 2 minutes. At least dries enough to work back into.
Are these ones finished with the rubber bands?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, that's all ready to go.